Hi, this is Jaya. In this video, we shall see the summary of The Art of Fiction by Henry James. Come, let's go to the summary. This is a lengthy essay written by Henry James and it was published in 1884 in Longman's magazine. And why Henry James wrote this essay is, he read a lecture of Sir Walter Besant titled Fiction as One of the Fine Arts. And as a reply to that fiction as one of the fine arts only, Henry James wrote The Art of Fiction. And James begins The Art of Fiction by saying that storytelling is a mystery. Mystery means it's a secret. So he says that storytelling is an art. It is a natural gift and that is a mystery. How you have that art of telling story is something which cannot be explained. It's a natural gift to each and every storyteller. And at the same time, Besant says that plot is more important than characterization. And he says that all the fiction must have a moral purpose. And another thing is, he says that your own experience and your observation are the main creative tools to write a novel. And James argues against this. He says that all these will restrict a writer from writing his fiction. And he says that no good novel will be produced from an ordinary superficial mind. So if the novel is good, it only reveals that the writer is a great person in storytelling. And if you see Besant's original essay, there are three main arguments in it. First is, he says that narrative fiction, we must understand that this essay came out in 1884 and that was the time when novel was at its beginning stage. So at that time, Besant says that narrative fiction should be considered as an art on its own right and it should be given the same value like how painting, sculpture, music and poetry are given. And for this, James agrees because he also feels that fiction is also an art on its own right. And secondly, he says, for this we have to lay down certain guidelines which should be taught to the writers and that will help them to produce good writing. And this is something which James disagrees. And third, he says that the rules alone are not necessary for success and the writers must have a powerful artistic talent to express their views in their novels. To this, James agrees because he also feels that a writer must have a natural talent. And he also agrees about the aesthetic interest of the novel and that the writer must have an artistic ability which this art form requires. And at the same time, he feels that there should not be any guidelines or rules or laws which will control the writers from expressing their point of view in their novel. And he says that the purpose of the novel is only to represent life. And when a novel attracts the reader is when it is interesting. So if the novel is very interesting and if the writer is able to express his point of view and if he is able to represent life in his novels, then the novel will be a success. So there is no need for any guidelines for writing a novel. And for that he says 3 points. He says that just like what Besant has said, writing a fiction is also an art like painting, sculpture, music and poetry, and definitely there is no limit to write a fiction. But at the same time, he says guidelines are not important for writing a fiction because that will only hinder the writer from expressing his point of view. And finally, he says natural talent is definitely required for writing fiction. And whatever guidelines you are going to lay down or if you are going to teach a person, that cannot replace the natural talent if it does not exist in the writer. And Besant says that a writer must write from his experience. But James argues that a writer should write only what they know. And this should not stop them. That is, if they are going to think that they should write only from their experience or only what they know they should write, it may stop them from bringing out their own perspective in the novel. And then Besant says that characters should be clearly illustrated and James agrees to that. And at the same time, he says that the writer should write the characters, that is, he should create the characters and make them as believable to the readers. Only when the readers believe the characters, the story will attract them. And then Besant argues that there must be a moral principle in the novel. But James says that the story must be interesting. But if you are going to set rules and guidelines and say that there must be a moral in the story, that may remove the art from the story. And he says this may hinder a true artist from creating an interesting story. And then afterwards, James closes the essay by encouraging writers to stay true to themselves in their vision. And he says that the writers must not worry about the rules and more about the creating art. And he says that they should write what they feel, look and sound real, rather than trying to write what they feel, look or sound right. So they need not think whether they are writing correctly or wrong. They should only write what will be real to the readers. The readers must feel that the characters are real, the plot is real, and it should appeal to the readers. And Henry James says that novel has established itself as a genre. That is, genre means like poetry is a genre, drama is a genre, and novel. That is, this is in 1884 when novel was at the beginning stage, and he says that now novel has established itself as a genre. And so he advises the writers not to write only from the imagination, but also to start revealing the reality, what is happening in the current scenario, because that will be more appealing to the readers. And at the same time, he is very happy that most of the writers are of the same viewpoint as him. And particularly he mentions Virginia Woolf, who says rules may be wrong and must be broken, because guidelines and rules and laws all are laid down by one particular person, and that person may be wrong or may be limited in his expression. So therefore, when a writer wants to express his point of view, he can break those rules and laws and come out. And then he also says that novels must raise an awareness among the readers, and a novel must be in such a way that it raises their curiosity and lead to discussion and experiment, and the readers must raise questions after they read a novel. Therefore, the novel must not be like a theory, because when you're writing a theory, it may be dull and it may annoy the readers. And he also points out to the great philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, who have called fiction as wicked. And why they called fiction as wicked is because they felt that fiction was filled only with imagination, and it may mislead the readers and make them lazy. And particularly Plato has said that fiction is harmful and untruth because it is only imagination. And Aristotle has said that art is only superior to history because history tells what happened, whereas art will give a colorful emotion to that to make it appealing to the readers. And Henry James feels that the modern novelists have understood the purpose of fiction and are handling that genre in a very good manner. And so he says a good novel should have a good beginning and end, and the characters must be good, and the writer's point of view and the plot should be clear to the readers. And he says that the writers must keep in their mind that their work will remain even after them. So they should write in such a way that their work will be appealing even to the future generation. And at the same time, he says that each and every work will definitely invite good as well as bad criticism. But this criticism must not hinder them from writing. And then he says that his views of certain writers of that time and even about their works. Actually, it's a very lengthy essay, so I would really request you to read the original essay to understand what he says about each book which he has read and about the writers of that time. And finally, he says that he and Virginia Woolf have become role models for the present writers, which really makes him happy. This is what is a small summary of the art of fiction. If you have anything more to add on to this, please write it in the comment box. It will be useful to others. And please read the original work to understand the full content. Like the video, share it with your friends. And if you have not subscribed my channel, please subscribe. Thank you.